Welcome to the Bayesian Conspiracy. I'm Eneasz Brodsky.
I'm Steven Zuber, and today we have a guest.
Hi, I'm Patrick Chapin.
Ooh, putting on a sexy voice for the audience.
Yeah. Hello. I'm a professional Magic player, game designer, and writer.
And we are having Patrick on with us again because there is more AlphaGo goodness to talk about. For people who have not been with the series from the beginning, episode 4, we talked with Patrick about AlphaGo, and it's legendary. At this point, I'm sure we can call it legendary. At the very least, historic 5-game series of Go against... God, he wasn't a world champion, yeah.
Yeah, so Lisadal was the 18-time world... Yeah, Lisadal was the world champion.
Okay.
And the most recent match that just took place is against KG, the best Go player in the world. Which, the two of them have been head and shoulders above a lot of other people, so it's a little tricky because one of them being the world champion and one of them being the highest ranked. KG is a bit of a prodigy. He's much younger than, he's very young for there aren't very many Go players, remotely as good as him, but he's very young. Okay. And definitely humanity's last hope with Lisadal going down.
Right. So it was very big news, and it was a fascinating and exciting episode. One of the few episodes of our show that I can actually say was exciting to listen to. So,
Woo!
Yeah. So go back and listen to that if you'd like to, because we probably are going to reference it a bit.
And there's going to be a test after.
Yes, huge test. But short version is AlphaGo beat Lisadal 4-1. Including a move that a lot of people have described as a move that no human could make. It is just an inhuman move that no one really understood, but ended up winning AlphaGo the game. And that was when people really started to realize that this neural net deep learning thing was a very big deal. And recently, by recently I mean, was it last week or 2 weeks ago?
Oh yeah, just a couple weeks ago. Just like it just finished. It's been going on at the Future of Go Summit in China. It's kind of resolved that, after Master's performance, Master was AlphaGo's kind of identity during a secret test that was halfway between current day and Lisadal from a year ago.
Yeah, we should mention that AlphaGo has been training in the interim. Yeah,
it's been thinking a lot about the game. Actually, though, this AlphaGo so they actually ended up blowing up the entire way they went about it. Like, they learned a lot from the original AlphaGo. But by the time AlphaGo adopted its alter ego Master, briefly, it was actually kind of brand new. It was starting over because AlphaGo's strategy, it was novel compared to other neural nets because of, other computer programs, because of how much it was making its own strategy. It studied games, but it was its own strategy. By the time it was Master, it mostly just thought about Go and then developed strategies from playing against itself
instead of looking at previous games.
Instead of being trained on all the games that all the humans are playing and so on, it's learned more and more and more and more from itself. It's just built a lot of its structure. It's a lot of its understanding of the game based on its own just thinking about the game, like playing against itself a very, very large amount of times.
Well, Master, if I recall the story, no one knew at first that it was AlphaGo, that it was a software program when it was playing on the internet. Because this was all Go that was happening online.
Oh, yeah. There's a popular message board where the best Go players in the world could play, and this is the message board. This is absolutely the most elite people could play here, and a mysterious character that nobody knew who it really was, but it was listed as 9Dan, which is like the highest rating anybody can have, called Master, showed up and just started playing some games against other top players in the world. And at first people didn't think too much of it, but after a while it goes on this win streak. Master's going on this win streak that was unrivaled, and people started becoming suspicious. And it was also clear from Master's play that there was a very good chance that Master had to be, at the very least, computer-assisted, if not a computer, but it didn't make sense, because first of all, Master just plays too fast.
Okay.
Second of all, Master was making legendary moves multiple times per game, where it's like the kind of move that this would be the greatest move of your year, and you would talk about this, and this would be a whole big thing. It was doing that multiple times per game, and it was like, it became such a thing, all the other best players started just coming in to play against Master, except Lisadal.
Aha!
That was interesting. But then, so Master just basically 100-0. Just beats everybody. There was one match that for a little while actually displayed as a draw. Because on the message board, if somebody times out or something, there's certain conditions where if the game hasn't gone on long enough, it just listed as a draw. And one of his opponents was unable to continue. And so temporarily it was a draw, but they later redid that one, and Master won that as well. But after Master was so convincingly strong, it seemed as though, eventually Google reveals, yes, it was actually us all along. Ah, ha, 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 ha. And life goes on, and from that point they announced a Future of Go summit, and they want to get everybody together and talk about what's next in Go, and talk about the implications of AlphaGo and other people's programs, because there's a lot of other companies that are starting to make extremely good Go playing programs as well. For instance, China actually has a program now that is so good that it's beating other high-level players. It wasn't at the space of AlphaGo, but it was, and actually they did not compete against each other. I think one of the terms, it was really strange. I think the Chinese government and Google have they're trying to ease back into a positive relationship with each other. Google left the country after the Chinese government allegedly raided their location there, and a number of years ago, Google left China.
Yes.
Because of, according to Google, violence by the Chinese government that they were responsible for.
I had missed this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's been a very uneasy situation. They just left, everything got out,
What did the government want from them?
Information. They just wanted primarily information about all of everybody in the country, and everybody's contacts, everybody's connections with everybody else, every message they've sent. They basically just want all the information about all the Chinese citizens. But in any event, it's been a while, and they've talked it out a little bit, and they've kind of come to a place of trying to repair relations and move forward in some way. And in this spot, one of the things, a lot of people ask, like, oh, did you have the Chinese program play against AlphaGo? And it's, no, we don't want to have just computers playing against each other. But it is...
Wait, why don't we?
Well,
I think that would be awesome.
Between you and I, it's pretty clear that it is because of the strength of AlphaGo.
Right, but I mean, in the future, it'd be kind of interesting to see which country can make the best Go playing AI.
I think it would be extremely interesting.
Even if one robot is wiping the floor with another one, robot fight.
Yeah, but in this spot, one of the robots is owned by the Chinese government, who is hosting the event. They actually cut the feed after AlphaGo's first game against KG, or during it. It was massacring KG. It was so brutalizing KG that they cut the feed and stopped broadcasting it and censored it.
Wow.
And they still put on the event and everything, and they put out their own press release. They just stopped showing the game in question and so on. Like the commentary, because the commentators were being honest about their what they were watching and what they were witnessing. And even though the game ended up only half a point in favor of AlphaGo, and the Chinese government really held on to how close he kept it and so on, but it was never close. It was already 100-0 effectively. It was just off the board much, much, much earlier. It's just that AlphaGo does not care about the margin of victory. It only cares about maximizing the probability of victory.
Yeah. Did we ever get to see the end of that match?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Everywhere else except China got to see it. It was only censored internally. It's on the internet. You can just go get it. It's just... Yeah, actually, all the matches, so they did a variety of events. The headlining thing was 3 games against KG, where the winner gets $1.5 million, and the runner-up gets $300,000.
Okay.
Which is, pretty good deal for KG.
Yeah.
But he knew going in that it was going to be extremely difficult. He was very outspoken about how he could beat AlphaGo a year ago, like witnessing, particularly when Lee Sedol actually won a game. But by the time Master rolled around, KG was of the opinion that there was a good chance that that AlphaGo would be too strong. And in the course of this match, during the first game, they asked him beforehand about what his chances were, and he said this is the match he's prepared the most for in his life, but he thinks it will be very, very difficult. He's going to try. It's going to be very difficult. And after the first game, he said that he will not play against computers after these next 2 games, and that there is no more competition, and that there are no good Go players except AlphaGo. AlphaGo is the god of Go.
Well, I take it all 3 games went very poorly for the humans.
Although, interestingly, AlphaGo won all 3. Yeah. But the second game, according to AlphaGo's metrics, the second game is the most perfect it's ever seen a person play.
Oh, cool.
Like, he actually 100 moves into the game. I mean, first of all, his first 50 were effectively flawless, but even 100 moves into the game, it was still competitive. And it sounds funny to use that as a metric, but almost nobody has ever lasted more than 25 moves and still having good chances. And here, he's 100 moves in and still has chances. Typically, AlphaGo has already long secured the victory. You're just going through the motions. And
I think that's a perfectly valid metric to make when like you're this outclassed. To say I kept up for this long still really counts for a lot.
Overwhelming.
I mean, he might have had the floor sweep to them at the end, but like to know that he went down as valiantly as any human possibly could or ever has, that's probably, or maybe not necessarily possibly could, but ever has. That's still something to celebrate.
Oh, absolutely. His performance was absolutely marvelous, because part of the thing that makes this match so different than a year ago is that when Lee Sedol played against AlphaGo, AlphaGo was merely playing stronger than any human ever has. This AlphaGo, so AlphaGo a year ago, stronger than any human. By the time it was Master, it was making brilliant, game-changing moves that you would write books of theory about multiple times a game, but it was still playing Go. By the time this event rolled around, it was no longer playing Go. It's alien. Its strategies are ineffable. Where AlphaGo before there was this golden period for a little while where people were watching, and it's like every single game they watch, AlphaGo's just pioneering new strategies, new styles, opening up all this exploration, completely flipping the table of so many paths are being opened by AlphaGo. But now, watching AlphaGo, it was so alien, it's hard. You can find moves and things that you can use, but it's very difficult to understand what it's doing because its strategy doesn't adhere to its actions, its behavior. It's like there is no rhyme or reason that we can grok yet, and people are trying to put the pieces together of why do you make a move here sometimes, why do you make a move there, but it's so alien that it's hard to know what you're even doing.
It appears to be just random moves, but somehow always ends up being a huge blowout victory.
Well, it's not just pure random. It's like
but from our perspective,
yeah, whatever the order is, we can't see it.
Yeah,
we don't know what the patterns are. We don't know because there's all these heuristics that people use for playing Go that AlphaGo doesn't play Go the way that people do. It doesn't seem to. It just so many of the things that are basic tenets it doesn't adhere to. It does so many moves that humans should never do. And we don't know why you can do them some of the time, and when we try, we fail because we don't know whatever later things that are happening that make this work out, and we're trying to put the pieces together, but at this point, actually this match was so decisive that AlphaGo has retired and is no longer playing anymore, partly because watching it's not the same thing anymore, but partly also because at this point, they have proved their case. It's so far beyond. One of their things
I was kind of saddened when I heard that AlphaGo is retiring now. Like, it could just keep continuing being more and more alien and ineffable, right?
But AlphaGo existing makes there no robot versus robot fights that anybody cares about. Because they would want it to face AlphaGo, and AlphaGo is so much stronger at the moment, and they don't want there to be a perpetual arms race for winning this against other, there's going to be an appetite for robots that face other robots and other companies to do that. But I think that is outside the scope of what Google and DeepMind want to do.
So what do they want to do? Why would they retire AlphaGo? What interest of theirs does it serve to stop AlphaGo now?
They're moving on to other things. AlphaGo has played many games other than Go and is going to be playing many other games. They just want to move more of their focus to some of the other games because in this spot, their premise wasn't just that they could make a computer program that they could make AlphaGo beat humans. They also wanted to demonstrate their ability to convert processing power and CPUs into ELO, and use ELO as a measure of intelligence and demonstrate the relationship between an increase in power and an increase in processing centers and intelligence.
We should really quickly clarify for people, ELO is the ranking system.
Yes, ELO is effectively a way of describing the skill. What are your chances of winning? And Google, one of their things was that it's not just we can make something better than a human at this. They wanted to demonstrate we can increase electricity and we can increase how many computers we put in the network and demonstrate a math formula of the function of how much more processing power do you need to get each unit of intelligence more. they also were improving their efficiency. Whereas AlphaGo a year ago was thousands of, had thousands of local hubs connected in a giant network. They brought a laptop to beat him this time.
Holy crap.
They've gotten it. AlphaGo has become so good that they could just bring it with them. And in this spot, they were able to demonstrate, like they said, we actually know exactly how good it is with this much processing and this amount of efficiency and this whatever. Right? Currently, this version of AlphaGo is playing at a 4,500 ELO, which, to give some context of what it means, effectively every... It's a logarithmic scale of sorts, and the amount better that AlphaGo is than the best player in the world is... No human is even, remotely close to that.
I was slightly sad to hear that it was so... I mean, on the one hand, it's amazing that there's ineffable god of Go among us. On the other hand, in our previous episode... Like I said, it was actually exciting because you relayed the games to us, and there were really interesting parts where it was human versus machine, and there was like the one legendary move that everyone talks about. And in these games, there's like less to talk about because
that's only in the match against KG. Yeah. See, the plot thickens.
Wait, really quick, I have a quick interjection. You mentioned that it was making crazy moves a lot when it was playing online as Master. Mm-hmm. Were those moves as ineffable as the legendary move against Lee Sedol? Was it like those 5 times a game?
It's like the moves that it did against Lee Sedol. I mean, it was playing brilliantly, but one of the moves that it did against Lee Sedol, it's like it was doing that multiple times a game instead of one time in the whole match. Yeah, it was like it was doing that multiple times a game where it's like, oh my god, this is like a paradigm-changing move, but it's doing it multiple times.
That's awesome. It does, I think I see Enyash's point, that it makes it seem less special because it's doing it like flippantly all the time now. Where it's like, yeah, remember that time like I don't know, did this crazy magic thing? Well, now I'm just doing that casually. I can do that, with one hand with my eyes closed.
Well, every single move is like that, there's really not much to talk about anymore. It's just like, yeah, God came in and did his magic.
But see, the plot actually thickens. AlphaGo may be so much stronger than a human, but the best human versus the best computer was only one of the events at this Future of Go Summit. They also had a match of AlphaGo versus 6 of the best players in the world, or 5 or 6 of the best players in the world, and teaming up, which is actually it's actually relatively efficient. You would think, it might be challenging, but there is a way you can be efficient about Go together as a team that isn't just going to slow you down and make you worse than the sum of the parts.
Interesting.
And perhaps even more fascinating, which AlphaGo, by the way, routed him. AlphaGo is still just too strong compared to even humans teaming up. But the part that I found particularly fascinating, AlphaGo playing on a team with an expert level player, not even a professional level player, somebody who would be, I guess they would be somewhere in the ballpark of 100. They would never win. They could never ever win a game against KG. Okay. Ever. They could never win a single game. And like when an expert player plays on a team with AlphaGo, they actually crush AlphaGo. They actually win 5 out of 6 times against AlphaGo without a teammate. Even though they're a human that's so weak of a human, they could never beat the best human player ever. They're so helpful because humans are so much better at coming up with ideas of what to look at and think about, that when the human, instead of the human deciding what move to make, if the human's job is to point to areas for AlphaGo to think about, suggestions, ideas, if it's providing seeds and feedback, humans would appear to be monstrously more effective at coming up with ideas and suggesting things than AlphaGo is.
That is super interesting.
Yeah. And so there's this question of there's this new era, because one of the big things they unveiled is just how real of a sport Go tandem with a computer is, because Go tandem with a computer is actually very meaningfully different than humans playing with chess. When humans play chess with chess robots, a robot just tells them what to do. Mm-hmm. When humans play with Go, there's a new skill set, a new strategy, area for strategy of how to most efficiently provide suggestions to AlphaGo.
Huh.
And AlphaGo can actually record how useful the human suggestions were and give points to people that it plays with based on how effective they are at providing suggestions, and it can provide feedback so that the humans can learn how to provide better ideas. Like, it can reward the human for which types of ideas we're giving the AlphaGo, the right ideas of where to look at. And meanwhile, AlphaGo's also learning from the humans, like trying to figure out the pattern of where do humans suggest looking at in circumstances and so on.
So it's trying to replace us anyway, with little mini human simulators.
Yeah.
So there's this brief window now where like cyborg fights will be more fun than just robot fights.
Oh, yeah. I think right now the fact that a human playing with a robot versus a human playing with a robot is actually incredible, because when the human plays with the robot, they play better than any human on Earth, but it's still, and this is without it's without AlphaGo playing is even better because of how much it looks more relatable when they just have other people's programs playing. But when people are playing with a robot on their team, it's like the difference between two people running to the end of the 100-meter dash or a sprint or whatever, a mile run or whatever. Two people are running this race versus two people in cars. It's a different sport, but it's a new sport.
That's sort of the mental model I was picturing, except I was doing it with like gladiators and just like I know robot isn't like necessarily the best word for this, but it's just what I'm picturing just to make it fun for myself, and I think it's relatable. But when I was picturing two robots fighting against each other, I was thinking like Robot Wars, where they build robots with saw blades and stuff like that.
And it always turns out to be either a spinner or a flip bot that wins.
Right.
Yeah.
But then I was thinking, oh cool, cyborg fights, and then I'm just picturing like gladiators, but like augmented arms and like shields and stuff.
Yeah.
But I know that's not super helpful. What I was thinking is it ties into like a car is like an augmented person in the sense that like it just enhances our ability to go fast. Kind of torturing the analogy, but
maybe bicycling is the better way to put it.
Yeah.
In some ways, it's like bicycling.
Yeah, there's got to be there's no good mid-ground motorcycle.
So
Nah.
do you know enough about this, how this team-up thing works, to talk about it at all? What does the human do? Is it
suggest moves, stones, just provide ideas of like possible moves or a possible sequence of moves. It just keeps feeding it ideas of things to think about or things to look at.
And why are humans so much better at that than the computer? You would think the computer could do that too, right?
The computer's approach to how to come up with ideas, it's somewhat cumbersome. Even though the computer's strategy, how it values things, how it thinks about things, is its own devising, it's just not as efficient. It uses a lot of random generation of its own. Like it comes up with ideas using effectively random number generators, like variations of its own strategy, its own experiences, and for reasons that are not yet clear, there is a skill that humans seem to have. There is a efficiency of processing where they are able to parse out what are good things to look at much faster and more efficiently than AlphaGo on its own. Like it's providing ideas that are much more than the sum of the parts.
So AlphaGo does all the really detailed looking.
Like AlphaGo looks all the way to the end of games many times.
Okay.
Like every second it's looking at thousands and thousands and thousands of entire games. And humans don't do all that. So AlphaGo spends a lot of processing power playing out games. And the humans can spend a lot of processing power doing other things. How they're coming up with these ideas is not clear, but that's one of the areas that I think DeepMind and others are interested in trying to figure out is how do humans imagine things? Like how are humans so good at imagining things? But actually, on your topic about the fighting, that's already been proposed. There's actually standing offer already for robot versus MMA fighter. Now, it's a tricky thing because I think
I'm assuming they would pad the robot or something.
I don't think that there's any. I also just don't think that. I don't know. I mean, maybe you could find the right person, but to me, I think that it's a difficult thing to watch a human versus a robot fighting because it just seems so clearly like, dude, you can just make the robot. Like, I mean, I already have experience of what it's like to try to fight a car driving 70 miles an hour at me.
There was a Rick and Morty episode that references that when they did one of the interdimensional cable episodes, and one of like it just like flashes between like these random bullshit improv shows. And one of them was like humans fighting cars, and then like oh look, he's going for it, and then oh no, he got tripped and he's being chewed up by the tires, and then it's like wouldn't the car just win every time? Yeah. I think that's exactly what would happen. Like you just make the robot too hard to hit,
right? Like you can't dent steel with your fists,
right? Maybe
so there'd have to be some other rules. Like if you hit it hard enough, it registers as I don't know, something. You'd have to make the robot vulnerable in some way.
It could be like a pointed system, like in a Taekwondo match or something. But that sounds a lot less boring than watching a robot try and kill a person who's like agreed to try not be killed by the robot.
Right.
I'm not a violent person, but I would watch the hell out. I might watch the hell out of that. I'd see how gruesome it was first.
Watching two robots fight each other, though. I mean, it's one thing if they're just doing the whole spinners and flipping, but like. if they got to meet specifications with, if they look like people and they're cyborg, robotic, or whatever, and it's literally just remote controlled, and there's two humans fighting with the cyborgs.
Oh, that would be interesting.
Because I think
Pacific Rim.
Yeah. I got a feeling that if you just have the robots use like machine learning in order to figure out how to fight, it might end up being much less compelling of viewership. It might be awesome, but I bet the window of where it's awesome to watch is relatively small before both robots are like weirdly hiding on the edges of the cage and like just spastically bouncing around in some unknowable pattern, trying to position.
Yeah.
They're trying to arrange all the atoms in the air into a way that
90% of it is just them standing at each other, and then there's one flash of movement, and someone has decided a winner.
Yeah. So I'm not so sure that. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen. There's a video on YouTube of machine learning playing Super Smash Brothers. It's weird watching. It doesn't really play like humans do. It mostly hangs out off the edge of the map, like exploiting being able to jump off the end, and it bounces around in a way where it's just, it's not. It's weird to look at. It's like, okay, I guess this is Super Smash Brothers. Like, if you think it's obnoxious when people play Street Fighter 2 and they just do ducking, short kick, or just try to trip you over and over again, the AI is shameless about being exploitive in its strategy.
Because it literally has no shame.
The game is
First thing we got to do is program shame into our computers.
I don't know. I feel like that might be how it all goes south, though.
I mean, yeah. Well, what do you do when you're sufficiently shamed? You lash out, right? We don't want that. If all it cares about is winning, it doesn't care about, like, shaming us right back. I don't know, whatever.
One of the current exciting next steps for AlphaGo, because it's moving on to other games, it's got new challenges, right? One of the things it's trying to do now, which seems like it would have been unimaginable a year and a half ago, is it's learning to play StarCraft.
Yes! Now this is fucking amazing.
Oh, yeah. So one of the parameters that makes it particularly interesting is that they're going to limit its number of actions per minute to being like a human. Mm-hmm. Because already there are there are already ways that people have demonstrated that you can literally just brute force certain things by allowing the computer to just make thousands and thousands of operations. And it's like, okay, yes, if you're just a monstrous hive mind and you can control, your micro is just so far off the charts, you can brute force the game. But instead, AlphaGo is going to try to learn how to play StarCraft with only having as many operations as humans get. As many
actions per second.
It's micro, exactly, being just like a human, but it just rely on its strategy. That'll be interesting to see how that one goes. And actually, Blizzard announced partnering with them in this way and letting them kind of go in, because normally it's against the terms of service of StarCraft to let bots play. Yeah, you're not supposed to actually have bots playing the game. But they're going to allow AlphaGo to take a crack at it and supervise that whole thing. But
it seems like if you asked first and you're Google, Blizzard should be like, yeah, okay. You're not some asshole trying to boost your score on the boards.
Right.
You've asked permission. It would be weird if they're like, no robots. That's the rule.
They actually partnered with a couple companies, like both Blizzard making Hearthstone and Wizards of the Coast making Magic the Gathering, where AlphaGo, effectively, same thing. DeepMind was learning how to read specs, like the specifications by designers of what cards they wanted implemented for Magic or for Hearthstone, and then writing a script for how to implement those cards in the digital versions, the digital card games, because it's part of the language. All this stuff has to do with ways. DeepMind is trying to learn how to think, and how to think like a human, and how humans think. And one of the biggest areas is with language. Language is very, very, very challenging for machines, and so to be able to read the specifications of what it wants, or of what the humans want made, and then instead of having to pay an engineer to like literally write the code, AlphaGo would just write the code for the humans of what they wanted, and then they would evaluate how good was AlphaGo able to figure out what we wanted, and then literally write new scripts to implement it.
That's verging into the scary territory.
Yeah,
in
plus
my opinion.
I don't want to be out of a job.
Well, I mean that too, but just
and
just
the end of the world, but
right. Just the fact that it would be able to. I mean, at that point, you're actually doing thinking.
One of the challenges, though, is that so far, one of the reasons that one doesn't get publicized as much is that it's not ready yet.
Okay,
it's not good enough at that. It was okay, and it got better, but it capped out, and still just wasn't good enough to do. Yeah, they need to make some serious advancements because its curve, it isn't getting enough better to be. It's missing a vital component of being able to figure out new things. It can do derivative things, but it's missing a certain ability to grok novel concepts that it wasn't making progress on yet. But they're going to keep working, and they want to revisit eventually after AlphaGo learns some new ways, or after DeepMind learns some new ways to think.
I'm somewhat excited about this StarCraft thing because there's so many variables in StarCraft. So many different ways that units can interact, and so many units you have on screen at one time, plus the way they act with their environment. It doesn't seem to me like a thing that is easily translated into a machine.
So one of the things
easily is doing a lot of work in that sentence, right?
That's true.
There's a reason it wasn't done 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Let's put it this way. One of the biggest challenges is how do you simulate an entire game of StarCraft? You can just play games of StarCraft, but humans can only play so many games of StarCraft. There's just not enough time in the day.
Yeah.
One of the advantages to Go is that AlphaGo could think about, like, AlphaGo has thought about more games of Go than all humans have ever thought about put together. So it's a very different thing. How is AlphaGo going to think about StarCraft without being able to simulate the games all the way to the end?
Because that is actually impossible, right? It can't play against itself.
Impossible is a funny word. I don't know
Right.
I don't know how impossible works.
Fair.
The only three types of impossible are we can conceive of how to do it, we just don't yet have the technology, or we can't even conceive of how to do it, but it's not forbidden by physics, or it's forbidden by physics, so we would need to have a new framework for how to think about physics.
Right.
All three types are just defined by what it takes for them to be possible.
That is a very interesting way of looking at impossible. I'm going to try to remember that.
Those are the three types of impossible. I mean, what is impossible? I mean, impossible. There are some people who think about the system as being all, like, it's just, this is the only thing there is, and all there is inside of this. But, there is more than just playing with this. There's more than just playing within the framework. There's also playing with the framework. Because what if you just looked at everything a different way?
Well, playing with the framework sounds like a different order of problem. Like, so I thought of impossible in terms of, like, impossible in principle, which is, like, faster than light travel. Unless, like, that turns out to be wrong, then that's just impossible, like, in principle. But then there's impossible in practice, like, I don't know, me getting to the moon for $15, right? For, like, an afternoon trip. Like, that's currently impossible in practice, but not impossible in principle.
The first type, it's like getting to the moon for $15. Maybe eventually you can. I know that, like, in almost all of human history, it would have been really weird to be able to get from Denver to Chicago for $15. I've done it for 19, not too long ago, like, one way on an airplane.
$19?
Yeah.
Wow. It's a hell of a deal.
Oh, yeah. But in terms of the Type 2 possibility, obviously technology improves. Teleportation is a great example of one that right now we have. It's just we don't have it in a practical way. The teleportation's increasing, and we're improving our teleportation all the time. Like, already right now we can teleport things.
Okay.
It's just...
No, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, yeah. So... look this up too. Dude, technology's happening really fast these days.
Okay.
But you can actually teleport. You can teleport, like, the phase of electrons and information and get it from one place to another without it having to move through that space. And it's very inefficient. Okay. But the amount of power and the amount of processing it would take in order to be able to transport much larger things, it's not even remotely feasible yet. However, things are going to get better. We're going to get better technology in the future, almost assuredly. I mean, it'd be very unlikely for us not to. But the Type 2 possibilities would be like, for instance, certain forms of time travel, where it's like it's very hard to even imagine how it works, taking negative energy and using it inside, like collapsing a black hole or any sort of. But it's not actually
reversing
forbidden.
Entropy.
Yeah, So the next question is, reversing entropy actually bridges into it nicely. Things that are forbidden by our physics, like entropy always increases, and you can't go faster than light.
Wait, are you of the opinion that time travel is not forbidden by our physics?
Definitely, it's not forbidden by our physics.
Okay.
Yeah, oh yeah, in my opinion anyway, based on all the physics I know anyway.
I do not know all that much physics.
It's not forbidden.
Okay.
There's a lot of things that are very difficult, highly convoluted, but the universe might be a very big place. The faster than light, however, I don't even know what it means to go faster than light, because the definition of light involves this in a way where you can't, or you would need a new definition. It just by definition doesn't. You can get from one place to another faster than light. In fact, some people would say that there have been, definitely people would say this, but there are some who say that they have successfully achieved reproducible faster than light speed communication in certain experiments, with being able to transport information through quantum entanglement, where...
Oh, is that the transportation you were talking about?
No, actually, there's more teleportation than even just that, but yes.
Okay, that is what I had heard about, and I had my doubts about that one.
Yeah, that one, it's tricky because the margin of error is large enough that it could be still in the realm of information could have traveled fast enough. So, yeah, it's really confusing how the world works, or how the universe works. Besides, I mean, for all we know, maybe it's connected in, a tightly furled dimension, and things are much closer in a different axis than what we're looking at.
I just know that no one comes to Stephen Hawking's time travel parties.
Aww.
So
does he keep throwing those?
I know at least he did once.
Okay.
But all it takes is once, right?
Well,
so
he sent
out the invitations afterwards.
Yep.
And so, like, if anyone could have come down the line when they heard about it, after, when it was announced, they would have shown up if they wanted to. And maybe future scientists
there
don't like
weren't
him.
enough cool people at the party, so they didn't want to go?
Might have just been him to keep the secret. I don't know.
Yeah, but the thing is, don't you think that, like, if you literally have a time machine, it occurs to you that maybe a person who's publicizing this very, very widely, like maybe the universes, there's a selection effect. The universes where the time travelers go back to that spot and go to the party.
That's the one where
Not
the
too
time
many of
traveling
those...
terrorists put a bomb in that party.
Right.
Travel terrorists.
Well, if
why not?
Yeah, right. Someone's going to get their hands on that tech.
Besides, are you telling me with the events of the past year that you have it totally out of the range that somebody isn't using time travel right now?
Just to troll us?
Oh, God.
Let's see what happens to the Americans if they get the Trump. Oh, God.
That ups my simulation hypothesis a little bit. Definitely, as the numbers... I was watching the numbers on 538 on November 28th, or November 8th, and I'm like, every time... When it switched from when Trump took the lead and didn't fall back down, I was like, oh, okay. This could be alternate history, infinite numbers, whatever. Let's see what happens if Trump won in 2016. Hit enter. That crossed my mind.
Right. I don't know why that event specifically would increase your odds, though. Like, I mean, how crazy is it that World War I started? Okay, something would have sparked it off eventually, but you heard about how unlikely the assassination of the Archduke Ferdinand was, right?
Sure. I guess this was the first, like, I don't know. It was my mind rebelling against reality, and that was part of how my brain coped with it.
Yeah.
But another part was that I thought the odds weren't astronomically low. This wasn't like he becomes president and immediately gets killed by a meteorite, and then his body gets struck by lightning 50,000 times.
It wasn't like the LHC got shut down by a donut or something.
Yeah, I mean, he's got to be on your list of top 100 people most likely every 4 years for the last 12 years, right? If you were making a list of 100 people...
That's true. I mean, he's run before. That alone gives him a bonus
people
points
who
up
have
for the
expressed
list.
an interest, go to the meetings, have political connections. It's how big of a pond is it when it comes to the people who are making major plays at these things? I mean, maybe not top 100, maybe top 300, I don't know, but certainly there are 300 million people. Like, the vast majority of people have a substantial... They'd be way lower on my list. Like, right now... Pick somebody. Mark Zuckerberg, he's way high on my list compared to most people.
No, you're totally right. And I like I said, this wasn't my brain doing the calculation. It was more just like my brain freaking out at the moment. Like in hindsight, then like the next morning you wake up and be like, well, 1 in 20, or 1 in 5 things happen. It was 20% was what roughly 538 had him at. And I was like, well, that happens,
About
more
20%
often
of the time.
Exactly. So like that was not the kind of like universe shattering, everything I believe is false observation that it would take to like shatter my reality, but like I said, that was
unlike the Patriots.
Oh,
the Patriots come back, the single greatest comeback in the history of football. The number of off the board like
I don't know. I
upsets and so
didn't.
on.
I didn't
So
watch the thing.
So there's a game in America called football. It's
But I hear they don't actually use their feet on the ball very often.
Well, I don't know about very often. I'm not one to judge, but mostly you touch it with your hands.
Yeah.
There's important points that involve the foot. You're mostly running on your feet is the thing you're doing with your feet.
Aye, then you could call any sport football.
Of course.
Okay, except
But if you
for
call them all football, then it'd get confusing.
Right,
except
exactly.
for water polo and regular polo.
So the Patriots are one of the best football teams in history. Like, they just have won many championships. Very, very prolific team with arguably the best coach in the history of football, or one of the best coaches. Certainly the best current coach. And they were losing by an enormous margin versus the Falcons. They were losing by just such an enormous amount that no team has ever come back from this much in a Super Bowl to win. And they actually did. They rallied late, and it was...
They called up AlphaGo. They were like, "What do we do, AlphaGo?"
I mean, I don't know. There's a lot on the line. A lot of people would have made a lot of money. I don't know if AlphaGo knows how to play football yet.
No, I don't know. Do you think football would be more complicated than StarCraft?
Well, so it's confusing.
There's so much randomness in both. Like,
I think that
you can't
StarCraft would be
simulate them
harder.
out. Yeah.
Assuming that we set aside the whole, you need to have a body and you need to like move. If the AI is just able to, if we hand wave the whole controlling all the humans on the field part, I would guess that football is easier than StarCraft.
I would assume it's much easier to simulate than a StarCraft game would.
Mainly because there's so many fewer moving parts.
Yeah,
There's just
exactly.
there's a lot of just random number generator things where if you just know the correct math, you can just leverage math and then whatever utility functions you're optimizing for, such as lift weight or have energy or be able to move fast or whatever the thing is. Actually, a lot of teams are experimenting now with technology for improving their sports, their athletes' abilities. Like, for instance, Steph Curry, one of the absolute best basketball players in the world. So he's only like 6'2". Most of the best basketball players, very, very tall, giant, freakish, abnormal sized humans. Steph Curry, aggressively normal sized human.
Do you know that 1 out of 6 people that are over 7 feet tall are in the NBA? Or 1 out of 6 Americans that are over 7 feet tall are in the NBA?
Yeah,
That's not surprising.
it's insane. It's like right now. It's like the number of people. So
This Steph.
yeah, so he does a lot of he has a neural coach, and there's a variety. So actually, there's a guy who used to work at Facebook that worked on a lot of AI stuff there that does some training with different athletes, and there's a variety of other people actually who are getting into it now too. But Steph Curry, the way he works, he has these goggles or glasses of sorts that have flashing lights, and he goes through the motions of certain drills, and they have staff that are helping, that are actors, that are all playing out the parts. A bunch of people who maybe they played college basketball, or maybe they played in the European League, or maybe they're just whatever. They're having a bunch of people, or it's the farm system. They're just people who are going through the motions, who know what they're supposed to be doing, and they reenact it, and they play the simulations over and over and over again. And Steph will know which simulation he's doing, which routine, which practice route, and the light will flash, and he does it, and the light flashes, and he does it, and the light flashes, and he does it, and they do a variety of these, and there's a separate one they do of training where the light flashes without him knowing which one he's going to have to do, and then he just has to react as fast as possible and do it. And then they just go through over and over again without him knowing which one it's going to be, and he just responds to the light over and over and over and over and over again. He does this so much, and eventually he sees the flash of light without the visor.
Oh, cool.
So he doesn't even react. He doesn't even think about it. He just is reacting. And
So are these situations that he's training on ones that occur often in the game of basketball?
they are the ones that are the highest leverage, most common, and ways for him to gain advantages. And after he does his training, he actually sits in a sensory deprivation chamber because apparently, they ask him about it. It's like, do you just some people only do it once in a while, but Steph actually stays in for much longer than a lot of people. And they're like, are you going crazy? You sure are spending a lot of time in the sensory deprivation chamber. But supposedly he's like, you can only, he does X amount of reps in an hour of neural training. And he says he does twice as many in the half hour he spends in sensory deprivation. Because your mind has nothing left to do. And so it just keeps replaying the patterns over and over and over again of the things that are in your short-term memory.
Jesus. That sounds almost like he's getting to the point of a sort of a Jiro Dreams of Sushi kind of basketball playing robot, you know?
What was this guy's name?
What else is he?
Steph Curry. So he's so off the charts, breaking the model. I mean, if actually 538 have written quite extensively about he has broken basketball. The entire game of basketball has been revolutionized in the last 3 years because of some ways that the Golden State Warriors, the team that he plays on, that currently this year are the best team any team has ever been, ever. They are way ahead of certain types of metrics and using, valuing things. They're very much, it's a bunch of Silicon Valley, and they're really into math, and they have a very futuristic look at the game. He completely changed the game with regards to shooting, like for instance, 3-pointers. In basketball, if you shoot from far away, you get 3 points, and this is a rule that has only existed for about 30-something years. They added it to help make the game more interesting, make more swings, but for most of the history of basketball, there haven't been that many 3-pointers, even close to as many 3-pointers as there are now. One of the challenges is that they're so hard because of how far away you are. However, people now have gotten so much better at training, they're so much stronger, and also they have been spending their entire lives shooting 3-pointers, whereas the people before learned as adults. Now the people have learned since they were small children. They're so much stronger, so much better, and one of the big things that happened just recently that Steph Curry almost accidentally discovered was that weightlifting can actually help you tremendously. It's kind of counter to a lot of the existing things. Like if you lift weights in the short run, it's harder to shoot 3-pointers. It throws off your whole, your arm strength, your balance, your depth perception, your sense of how far to throw the ball or how hard to use. But Steph Curry's case, he very gifted player, but his ankles kept giving out when he was in college. And when he goes on to the pros, he's having all these ankle injuries. There's all these giant people, and when he hits them, he goes down, and he goes down hard on the ground, and he's running so fast, and he keeps having ankle injuries that are going to be real problematic. And one of the things they try is having him lift weights. And he lifts more and more and more weights, with the idea being if you're just stronger, and also you learn how to fall. And if you watch Steph, he falls like 20 times a game because he doesn't try to land. His ankles will break because he's going so fast and so hard. He just flops down and lets the people knock him around because they're so much bigger than him. His strength has gotten so high that he can shoot from much, 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 much further than other people. And he, like for instance, he can actually make the majority of his, like if he just shoots from half court, he can just make it.
Wow.
And like I think last year, half of all the shots from further back, like from a certain distance back in the entire game, he was making, and it's like the equivalent of, I don't know which sport would be the correct analog here, baseball, of hitting 117 home runs when the record was like, in the 70s. It's like by so large of a margin that it doesn't even make sense what we're watching anymore.
That's really awesome. And like you said, AlphaGo for basketball. But I wonder, so I'm interested that like so many of the details of his training methodology are known, because you'd think like if it's giving him that much of an edge, you'd want to keep it on the down low.
Well, it's only after a few years, and I think enough other people are doing it now that they started talking about it. It's interesting though. There's lots of ways that are rapidly expanding. Like Mark Cuban, the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, another basketball team, he's been working on technology. Like for instance, he's got visors that when you're wearing the visors, when somebody, the glasses of sorts, when somebody shoots the ball, instantly it starts giving you probability assessments, one on the right, one on the left, and one on the middle, of whether the ball is going to bounce to the right when it misses, or bounce to the left, or if it's going to go in, And they've improved the technology to such a degree that by the time you let go of the ball, when the ball is only just a few feet from your hand, it already is off the board certain of where the ball is going to go. Yeah. It already knows if you've made it or not. It already knows which way it's going to bounce.
Because that's determined as soon as it leaves your hand. It's just how soon can you, with the technology, tell.
There's so little interference because of the air.
From the air.
It's predictable. It's very predictable. It all cancels out so much that by the time it lets go, it's already done the calculations. Yeah. And if somebody were wearing the glasses, they would, as soon as the ball is shot, they would be able to tell where they need to go to get the rebound, or if it's going to go in.
I'm assuming those sort of glasses would not be legal for play, though.
Correct. No. There's lots of rules about which kind of technology you can use or not, but I wonder sometimes, I mean, with sports, there's so much money on the line. There's so much prestige. There's so much, win at all costs at times. I wonder who's going to come up with contact lenses to do this.
That was my first thought, too, because they already have contact lenses that can project images in a way that isn't blinding or doesn't even light up your eyes. But I guess where you'd put the camera, but that wouldn't be that hard either once you're already putting stuff in your face.
I mean, I'm assuming that's not too far from now. They'll be able to just have those from cameras watching the field. And so commentators will be able to say as soon as it leaves someone's hand, oh, that's not going to go in.
That'd be funny.
I
would watch the hell out of a game of like both teams all wearing these glasses just to watch the entire group dynamic. It would change the game completely.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Imagine if underneath your shorts there was just a couple triggers that indicated to you. It just tapped if it was going to go if it was going to be on the right side or the left side, or if it was going to go in, and you just felt it. You wouldn't even need to have anything in your face. The camera could just be doing it. You just feel the tap, and then you behave and react accordingly.
Yeah. That is the sort of thing that sometimes. So I know this is the ideal that you strive for when you are working in a physical art. The one I most often think of is the martial arts, where if you have to think about what you're doing, you're going to lose against someone who just reacts on instinct, who has drilled so much on it that when a punch starts coming at them, their body does the thing without any conscious thought needing to get in the way. And that was, one of the really cool things I thought about The Matrix, when they uploaded Kung Fu into Neo's head, and he said, I know Kung Fu. It's not like he had any physical, any actual mental knowledge before. He was really surprised that now, when a punch came at him, his body would just do the thing. And I had that experience before playing Guitar Hero. And it's basically when I stopped playing Guitar Hero, because always before, there was notes coming on the screen, I would play on my guitar, and I got to the point where I'd been playing long enough, I noticed at one point in a particularly tough song, when I got to the solo, the notes were just being hit. And I wasn't present. I was just watching what was going down, and my body was doing the thing for me, and it was kind of awesome that my body could translate what was coming into my eyes and do what I wanted to happen, but on the other hand, it felt like I wasn't involved anymore. And that was when I stopped playing, because I was like, well, now it's just my body playing the game and not me.
Were you playing the hardest levels?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, because there's still room to go to the madness levels or something, right?
Oh, well, I mean, and after I stopped playing for a few weeks, then my skills deteriorated to the point where I could now play it for fun, but I don't play it as intensely as I used to, because... And I know that's where you want to get with almost everything, but to me it feels like you're almost subtracting the human at that point. And so when I see athletes like that just their entire life is just training, reacting, doing the thing, I was like, what is their internal experience like?
I want to weigh on two things really quick. One, that I think peaking, hitting the best you can ever do, probably takes some of the fun out of whatever it is you're doing, because part of the fun is getting better. And once you've gotten as good as you can get, or as good as is possible for you, then it's like, well, now all the fun of getting better is gone. Then it's just trying to maintain. But it was
pretty short too. It was only about 45 seconds, and then I fell out of that, and I had to think again.
Sure,
but just the fact that I had those 45 seconds.
And the more that you did it, the longer those seconds would probably be. So. Right. But then I've got to think too, with professional athletes, they probably hit that point for a little while, but then because it's so hard on them physically, by when they're in their 40s, they can no longer play.
Yeah.
Just so they don't have the time to put in to where they can hit that where they can peak long enough for it to stop being fun. I would guess, because they just destroy themselves.
Well, I think it is fun for a lot of people. They refer to it as flow or something, or being in the zone, where you just everything that you want to happen just happens without having to be consciously dictating things.
I think flow is a little different, but it is similar in the sense that you're not active like you described, but you're not necessarily optimal. You're just flowing.
When I was in Atlanta about 3 years ago, just a little over 3 years ago, I was competing in a Magic tournament for Magic the Gathering, and it was the biggest win of my career. Winning first place at this pro tour, and I trained for several weeks. I actually took a couple weeks off of work, and I was really, really focused on this particular the new cards and the new strategies. And the way I play, I try not to think about my plays. I try to train myself as much as possible when I'm going up to a competition to be able to make it so that my body knows how to play. And I save my brain for things that my body doesn't know. Like, there's triggers that my body will indicate that this is a spot where my brain should think about something. But I have found I only have so much processing power to begin with, and it is best to think about the things that my body can't do for me.
Huh.
And in the course of this tournament, I played some of the best I've ever played. I also got... I got quite fortunate. Things broke my way and ended up winning, but throughout the tournament, it was a very, very different kind of fun than the preparation. I typically enjoy the preparation more than the tournaments themselves. The preparation has all these problems to solve. There's ideas to try. Most things fail. You get excited about the things you're learning and the ways you're growing. You don't want to be doing the learning and the growing in the tournament. You want to just be a robot who is executing the task. And there is a different kind of joy to the flow state that you get to, almost, of when it works well. You're not always in a flow state, but there's a certain...
that perfect execution.
When you do it right, it's so hard. It's like you get challenged with 1,000 things, and when you can do those 1,000 things, you can do those 998 of the 1,000 things right, and you can just feel that you're in the rhythm, and you're just doing it. You're getting exactly the right amount of... you're presented with new problems, and you can solve it, and it's exactly the amount of problem that you're prepared to face. You're, like, maximally pushed.
Awesome.
That's pleasurable in a very different way.
I see. I was thinking, I guess I couldn't have it that way in a game like Rock Band, because that's just a game, whereas something like this where you're competing.
Well, they're all games. It's just, even the ones where you're competing with yourself.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't have to be about taking home $80,000. It can and smashing the opponents. It can also be about the realization, I have never been this good at Guitar Hero, and I wasn't even there. It was like I was just in the zone, and I was doing it, and for 45 seconds, I was the AlphaGo of Guitar Hero.
Right. My entire life is going to be chasing those 45 seconds again.
Well, one of the things that you do is you develop new puzzles, new challenges to go on to. Yeah. It's really tough to keep trying to, like, chase the previous things, because the highs that were high before, they don't satisfy the same way in the future, you know?
Yeah. This might be worth Googling for anyone who plays Dark Souls, but there's all kinds of videos of people beating, like, champion Gundyr with, like, just throwing dung piles and, like, parrying every move and, like, then doing, like, a 720 spin and doing a gesture. Or I saw a girl beat Pontiff Sullivan. These are just bosses in the game, but beat him blindfolded.
Oh, you told me about
that. She could hear him make the move, and as long as she thought she was locked on, she could parry and attack. Yeah. That blew my fucking mind. So that's the next step, right? Yeah. And then I've also seen people play that game with a Guitar Hero guitar. So you can always up the difficulty for yourself if you're looking for somewhere to go.
The amount of dedication, the following that Dark Souls has is inspiring.
I've never seen anyone beat Pontiff Sullivan blindfolded with a Guitar Hero guitar, so there's still room.
I'm curious your thoughts on tool-assisted speedruns. There's this relatively new phenomena in gaming where people are challenging themselves. I mean, speedruns have existed in everything since humans have been doing anything, is how fast can we do it, right? And the way a speedrun effectively works is you're just doing something ritualistic very, very quickly, such as beating Super Mario Brothers or something. How fast can you do it? There's a relatively new pursuit of some people, tool-assisted speedruns, where when you're playing, like they use like a device that effectively makes it so that when you're playing, you can rewind time. If anything goes wrong, if anything bad happens, you can rewind time to any moment previous. So it's like you keep getting to go back over and over and over and over and over again to try to make the perfect run. Yeah. And if you actually could reset time infinitely, like as often as you like, how fast are you capable of chaining together all of your perfect executions of every element of the game? And it takes on a very, very different texture once you know that you can rewind time as much as you want.
That's okay now. One of the really impressive things about unassisted speedruns is the fact that someone had to practice this until it was perfect, And any tiny, minuscule mistake means they have to go all the way over to the beginning and start over. So just the amount of time that they put into it is really impressive. And so with the tool assisted, I was slightly less impressed, although I could still see some of the artistry behind it. And like some of the stunts you could pull are really impressive. But with things that you would never have been able to figure out just without the tool assist. The various ways you can chain leaping off of shells and other things to do just the most crazy shit, which is literally impossible. Not just impossible, but you could not have had the idea to do it if it wasn't for the tool assist. But the thing that really I enjoy about tool assist is now people make special levels, like hell levels, specifically for people who use tool assist that just fuck the player. Things come out of nowhere, impossible to see, and the fact that you have the tool assist means you just rewind, and it's almost like a real-time puzzle that you're trying to solve as you're going through it. And that, I think, is pretty impressive. It's fun.
New forms. It's like using the technology in order to find new ways new artistic expressions, new puzzles, new challenges, new games. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you look at, like, for instance, some of the biggest games in the world now, like League of Legends and Heroes of the Storm, and these games are a style of game that is derivative to some degree of Dota. And Dota...
They're still known as Dota games, aren't they?
There's another game. There's Dota 2. Dota 2 is a game that people are still playing now. But Dota 2, Heroes of the Storm, and League of Legends are all descendants. Basically the three people working on Dota split up into made three different...
Is that literally what happened?
Yeah.
Oh, neat.
And it was a whole confusing thing early on of who has the rights to Dota, because one of the things that was really interesting about Dota is that no game company made it. Yeah. It was just some people. It was
Dota
a modification.
was a mod for, Warcraft 3.
Right, and so Dota, as a mod for Warcraft 3, turned into a game that eventually spawned 3 new games that became bigger than Warcraft.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, it's funny.
Counter-Strike was a mod to Half-Life. And
oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. The original Counter-Strike was a mod to Half-Life. And that, I mean, to me, that's very interesting because it was a whole new game, which eventually became its own game. But the thing with Dota that really I found awesome about it was that it was a mod that created a new genre of game.
Oh, yeah.
A new type of how to play games on the computer. And that I don't think I'd seen before. From a mod of an existing game, anyway.
Lots and lots and lots of cool stuff. I think technology it's very promising. Hopefully AlphaGo lets us keep playing games.
Yeah, so we're at about the we're at about the 1 hour mark. Do you have any predictions or thoughts as to what AlphaGo's existence and presence means to humanity as a whole, either game playing or more generally?
Can I refine that, or can I add a sub to that question, which was a year ago we talked about how estimates of AGI went up after AlphaGo kicked ass against Lee Sedol because it beat predictions. In fact, I got to reading Superintelligence pretty late to the game. I was reading it a few months ago, and Nick Bostrom was talking about how it seems like maybe by the end of the decade we can have a Go robot that can beat humans. Yeah. And that happened in 2015.
Right. It was not expected to happen until 2020 or later.
Yeah. So I mean, he put it tentatively towards the end of the decade.
And it wasn't. It wasn't even until 2016 that AlphaGo was legitimately better than any human.
Yeah. I don't even think his claim was, like the deep blue of Go. I think it was just like can be competitive or. It wasn't
awesome. Until 2015 that they could even like win against anybody.
That's awesome. So with that in mind, as far as the trajectory for AGI arrival, and I guess I wanted to just put that flavor on Eneash's question.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm rooting for Google. I'm hoping for DeepMind. There's a variety of different approaches. There are some people who, I think like Facebook's approach is a little bit more put everybody in the matrix, and that's how they're going to save us from AI. And I think that...
that? Really?
Yeah, I think Facebook's approach is very much, nobody's going to make an AI that kills us all if everybody's in the matrix.
Damn,
and maybe the AI will let us
Where did you get that impression? Has Zuckerberg said something to that effect?
Look at all of the actions and all of the strategies and all of the different types of mechanisms that Facebook uses. No. Zuckerberg has not explicitly stated that.
So what is it that Facebook does that makes you think that is the goal
they move more and more and more of people, they're functioning into a place, into a space, into a vehicle that Facebook controls.
Yeah, that could just be regular business pursuing business goals. The more people are forced to use Facebook, the more money they make.
And the more time in app, the more the more ad exposure.
Yeah.
Increased revenue.
Yeah. All those are real valuable as well, but there's only so many humans on Earth, and the amount of engagement for the humans. Okay, let's put it another way. When you use Google, your search history is available to you, and you can search for anything you want. You just type whatever it is you want to know about, and it gives you that information. Facebook's approach is very different. Facebook's approach is wildly obfuscating. It's not built for search. You can't just type into the search bar of Facebook and find all of the, like, a key word. Like, you can't get all of the same information searching all of you could search for the names of the people you know, and you can search for certain types of things, but you don't have access to an encyclopedic reference of every post every person's made directly in such a searchable fashion.
Right. Facebook is shitty is the shorthand that I use.
Facebook is also set up to train you. It's set up to have your eyes look at things that are advertisements and not know they're advertisements. It puts things in different places to trick your eyes into taking more of the information and to get you to click on certain links. And it auto-plays things to try to force you to look at them. Right. And it tries to sculpt your behavior. Facebook is...
Sam Harris had a fantastic episode about this recently. But that's all... I mean, to me, that's all like the standard predatory business of... I want all of your attention all the time for all humans because that is what I am motivated to seek.
Because I can sell your attention.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean...
But what's the end game? At a certain point, you don't need to sell anything when you have everything.
I don't think there is an end game. It's to me,
well,
that seems like asking what's the end game of evolution. It's just, the end game is give me more of your attention all the time because that's what translates into dollars for them right now. And I don't think they have a ending goal. It's just perverse incentives.
So, Frank Kusamoto, a guy who made the first Magic strategy website many years ago and did a bunch of stuff for the internet, he recently introduced me to this concept of the difference between infinite games and finite games. In a finite game, the player's objective is to win the game. The way they do this is they take more power until they win the game. They just are seizing power until they win the game, and then the game is over. And that's how a finite game works. And the way that an infinite game works is that you get better at the game so that you can keep playing. Like if you, for instance, are trying to do some ritualistic speedrun against yourself, you are actually trying to get better so that you get to keep playing, because if you improve your time by 1/100th of a second, now you have the next game, which is improve your time again. And the difference between games where the purpose is to keep playing, where you have to keep leveling up, versus games where you want to destroy and end the game, I think that it's not clear. I don't think every human is on the same page about wanting the game to keep going. I personally am a big fan of future paths involving everybody leveling up as much as possible so that we can keep playing the game. Because I think it would be interesting to know what's going on Mars. I think it'd be interesting to know what's going on Pluto. I think it'd be interesting to go to other galaxies. I think it'd be interesting to travel to other star systems and build other galaxies, or build things, build civilizations and structures. Hell, I might find myself inclined to reverse entropy and preserve the universe rather than heat death. I don't know. I could see what else there is to do.
You'll find no challenge to any of those missions from me.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of living for, forever, or as close to forever as I can manage, and having fun the whole time, and those all sound great to me, so.
That seems like a bit of a digression, though. Facebook is still just kind of seeking human attention, because that's what, as a corporation, it is designed to seek, based on its business model. It doesn't have an end goal, it just wants more human attention all the time.
Man, I don't know. Maybe.
You think it does have an end goal?
I'm not totally sure what it is, but yeah, I think that
that's a good point. By it, I meant the incentives and power structures that seem to dictate what actions are taken by that corporation.
I think that there are a non-zero number of actors that each have their own approach to how to control the future.
Okay.
And people are getting more and more and more powerful. it's not just people at the top either. I mean, if you think about, like, Denver, for instance, has places, there's all kinds of places for homeless people to charge their cell phones, their smartphones.
Oh.
Yeah, on street blocks. Like, if you look at, it's the notion that there are more people on Earth with cell phones than people with toilets. That is wild. That's very weird. That's weird. But powerful, too. Don't get me wrong. It'd be really nice for people to have toilets, too. But the power that a cell phone has, like, for instance, if you can just type into, like, and this is for smartphones, which is still, billion-something people, but if you can just type into you just type whatever you want to know, and 99% of the world's knowledge is at your fingertips. It's like, you can do a lot of things if you just have the ability to have whatever question. If you can think of a question, you can get the answer most of the time. That's crazy powerful. That's crazy powerful.
I think some of the profundity of that is lost on us because we're used to it. And then we just get bogged down when we're on, 3G instead of 4G, and it takes five whole seconds to get that answer instead of half of a second. So
no, but I do agree with you that is an awesome power.
No,
you kids today, totally you don't know how good you got it.
No, that's
when I was your age.
That's what I was saying.
Go to a library.
No, I maybe I conveyed that poorly. That's exactly what I was saying. That I to put it another way, I feel like in 100 or 200 years, we're gonna so we've got this demarcation now of BC and AD. I sincerely think it's extremely likely that we will look at pre-net and post-net as the next calendar shifting paradigm. The way that we think about history, because the world has changed so much in the last 30 years, and I think once those changes sink in at more levels and become even more ubiquitous, that's going to be, it's like nothing the world's ever seen before. That's what you're saying too.
Oh,
but it's wild.
Yeah, but it's also, from another perspective, like Louis C.K. says, it's like he gets in an airplane, and it's taken off, and suddenly they say, oh yeah, so we've got wireless internet on the airplane now. And he's like, what? You have the internet on the airplane? And then eventually there's technical malfunctions. The next time he flies, it's like, oh, sorry, the internet's not working. And what the hell? Come on, man. It's like how quickly you're just entitled to internet on the airplane all the time.
You're literally flying through the sky and watching cat videos on YouTube, and the second that one of those two things is taken away from you, you're like, what is this, the Dark Ages?
Yeah, or worse, it's not even taken away from you, it just takes a second to load. Right. And it's like, give it a second, it's going to space!
So, did you have any predictions on what this advance in DeepMind it means for the future?
Well, the biggest thing that we've already seen is that Google has been very sharing with regards to machine learning technology for people who want to have machines learn how to do things.
Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
Extremely good thing.
It seems good from an egalitarian point of view, but on the other hand, it also kind of maybe will speed the apocalypse?
Well, maybe.
Also kind of maybe might end the world?
Maybe, but honestly...
maybe it's important.
Yeah. The question, though, is how much is it moving the needle versus how much is it moving the needle the other way? Because I think that the technology is being developed, regardless whether we like it or not. Mm-hmm. And the more of it that is public and open source and available, and the more that the group, the majority, the everybody, rather than somebody in a room, is getting the advantage. I
wonder if this is a lot like publishing how to make nuclear weapons, right? It would have been really cool if no one who didn't know how to make a nuclear weapon could find out how to make a nuclear weapon by just looking it up in a book. Yeah. That we might look back, this could go great, but we might look back and be like, man, that sucked. We should not have just given that information to anybody who wanted it. They should have at least had to have had the skill to get to that information themselves.
On the other hand, based on our episode with Chase, open source software, I really, if it gets to the point where there's a lot of AIs running around in the world, would want all the AIs that I rely on for anything to be open source.
Sure, absolutely.
I do not want a corporation to lock my AI behind a box and be fully in control of that, and I have no idea what's going on in there. I would like
Facebook, like we were talking about earlier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, I
We
would
don't
like
like
it to be open
now-
to the community so
and
they can
that's-
audit it. And
We don't have access to like the algorithms that it uses to show us what campaign ads we were seeing last year, that sort of thing.
yeah, so
In
if
fact,
Google is
I
really
think an important
open,
way Facebook doesn't have access to see what Facebook is doing because it doesn't know what its own machine learning algorithms are showing.
Or alternatively, Mark Zuckerberg is going to run for president in the next 8 years.
I'd vote for Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, I would vote for literally any American right now.
I'm saying in 8 years, though. You don't know who will be running in 8 years. But what's interesting is if Mark Zuckerberg optimizes whatever positions in order to be maximally effective for being able to, I mean,
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see. I happen to be a much, much bigger fan of the open source approach that Google has of let's elevate everybody, let's try to work together, let's, Facebook's approach is, you can't trust humans. We'll keep you safe. Everybody get in the box.
okay,
Like obviously some people want to keep the AI in the box. I think Facebook wants to keep everybody else in the box.
it's very safe in that box, as long as Facebook is looking out for us. Yeah, I see what you got as your complaint there.
Oh, that's not even a complaint. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm betting on the wrong team. It's kind of tough at this point because I think already Facebook and Google know. So the line's already drawn. I don't think it'll matter too much, though.
Do you think there's a third actor, or it's just going to be Facebook
Oh, yeah.
and Google?
No. There's plenty. Like, for instance, I don't know how realistic it is. It might also be just kind of transitioning people, easing people into the idea of certain types of transhumanism. But, like, Elon Musk's, like neural net type of, like being able to stick a wire in your brain and get the updates yourself. That I think that the version that is being described right now, a little fantastical, but also that's the way most brilliant new technology works. I think that there's a certain normalizing and easing people into the idea of humans and AI fusing.
I'm looking forward to it.
I just want a car that drives itself.
I mean, that is step one, yeah. But I'm looking forward to we were just talking last week about being able to upload our consciousness and not being stuck with this body that's eventually going to decay.
Yeah, in a scary, dangerous universe. Yeah, it'd be nice to, at the very, like, whichever's easier, like making the universe less hostile and punish and so punitive, or making a new universe that's nicer. Whichever we can do first, I'm totally on board with.
So I'm just wondering if if we're currently doing a tool-assisted speedrun of life.
God, I sure hope not.
Wait, what do you mean currently doing a tool-assisted speedrun of life? Like we are in a simulation, and
If
they
my
just
life
keep
is someone's best effort, that
No,
person's
no,
a
no, no,
fucking
no, no,
idiot.
no,
but maybe
no,
it's
no,
like
we're not
society in
done yet.
general.
We're not done yet. No, not even just society in general, like us. Like maybe you're going through your life. Maybe you've already gone through life some number of times already. Maybe rather than at the point where you've fucked up, you go backwards. Maybe instead what you do is you don't know for sure because life's very complicated and confusing and it's not always clear what are the cause and effect. Because you watch a tool-assisted speedrun, it involves strategies that are very bizarre and weird. They look crazy. Yeah. They look crazy to the eye. But in retrospect, when you see the beauty of the design and you look back and you're like, oh my God, how was everything in the exact perfect place for me to learn all the right lessons, grow all the right ways, everything worked out, all this crazy stuff happened. That's really weird. It's almost as if I kept going back in time to the spot in order to get the exact perfect path.
I feel like if I could get myself to somehow understand exactly what that would be like, or to believe that, I don't know what it was like to be like really religious. No, I mean that, like, because that's the whole, like, God made this whole plan for you, right?
Right. I'm not saying this current run right now is going to be your best effort.
No, sure.
But it would mean that you are the only real person in the universe because...
No. Why?
Because you are the one who has control over when everyone gets rewound.
What do you mean control? What does it mean to have control?
In tool...
what if everything is in perfect harmony, like a tool-assisted speedrun?
But in tool-assisted speedruns, the levels don't get harder the better you get. They're designed already to play through them.
In the tool-assisted speedrun, you have an object that you are tracking. Like Mario, for example. The universe is all about Mario. So... what is your object of evaluation? If it's not one individual person, is it like all of society together being speedrunned?
No. Okay, let's say for instance that, and I don't know. This is, keep in mind we're talking about some impossible things that are highly unlikely. But like, what's to say that we couldn't already have? Like, why can't there be a very large number of people that are each executing a run, or like, for instance, if the multiverse is just very, very, very large, there's many variations. What's to say there isn't everybody's perfect run or a perfect harmonization between each person's run.
Again, if they were separate, then I would feel like the person who was the object of that run would be the only real person.
Object?
But
What does it mean to be real?
exactly.
Dude, plus, honestly...
This is the kind of thing I often do not like talking about.
Oh, okay,
because
well,
then I'm like,
apologize.
well, no one else around me is real, and that's a
I don't know,
problem
man.
for me.
I think there's a difference between other people not being real versus us all be connected. Like, to me, I think I don't know what's true or not. I'm the last person to know, but I operate as though it's true that you guys are different people than me, but that we are connected, that we are all one, and that the universe is, to some degree, there's some larger connection between all of us, and
So is there like
the relationship between it is
utility
nothing-
that mashes all the different speedruns together into one harmonized
I
thing?
don't know anything about the speedrun thing. That
Okay,
was
okay.
merely positing that I wonder, it occurred to me just now how much it sure is convenient the way certain things work out. I always just sort of assumed that it was a combination of selection effect, of just me being a human looking for pattern versus some amount of maybe there is a pattern, maybe there's some design, right? And it's confusing, and maybe that's where a certain amount of the personal choice comes in of how much to you do you think there is a pattern versus are you just looking for a pattern in the chaos, because that's what humans do. Maybe, but there's another option, which is maybe it starts out extremely chaotic, like machine learning, like the plays that AlphaGo would make before it's very good, and maybe it just learns over time. It plays over and over and over again, simulating games like a speedrun.
On that note, I think we're out of time.
Okay.
Thank you guys for having me.
No, this was awesome.
It was a lot of fun. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you all again in 2 weeks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.